Thank you for joining me on the Sutherland Report as I continue my political series where I am interviewing Reform UK parliamentary candidates up and down the country. What is a great thrill, and I have said this more than once, which means that I have met some incredible young people, is what is a thrill is when you are able to introduce someone at my ripe old age as a young man on a young person who is being an inspiration because they want to get involved and be politically active and they're aware of what is going on around them. And that is always, always a thrill. So I'm delighted to bring on Rob Baraclif, who is the prospective parliamentary candidate for Ashton and Under Lyne. And we will go through our usual geography lesson. And dear Rob will explain where the constituency is. Rob,
Hey,
hello, sir. Thank you for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you via the digital medium. So thank you for your time.
Well, likewise, Mark, and I do appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Spending some time with me. So
thank you. Well,
this will be
what
good.
I'll do, let's start off with my usual map. This just reminds everyone where the UK is because we do get some international viewers.
Indeed.
And there we are. And we are in the northwest. So I'm now going to move to, this is where the constituency is. So if you could explain that area. So what is the name of the constituency again?
So I am standing in Ashton Under Lyne. It's on the eastern side of Manchester. And my constituency contains Ashton Under Lyne, obviously, Droylsden, Duckingfield, and Audenshaw. So we've got a fair few towns around us. It's directly next to Hyde, Stalybridge, Mosley, where I actually do live. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Brilliant. Now, the present Member of Parliament for that constituency, would you like to explain who they are and their importance within the particular party that they are in?
Well, indeed, everyone knows the current MP in my constituency is Angela Rayner. Obviously, she is Deputy Prime Minister of this country, meaning, well, if Keir Starmer were to pass away, given he wins this election, Angela Rayner would be our next Prime Minister. So that's who it is.
So she is the shadow sort of deputy prime minister, as she is in opposition. But no, thank you, Rob. Now, hasn't she? We'll be a little bit careful with what we say, but hasn't she got herself into a little bit of hot water of late?
Listen, I understand. Obviously, everyone's seen the stories. She has been cleared of them, by the law. So there's no need to talk about that. But definitely a bit of. I'm not going to go ahead on that one.
No.
Everyone knows what's happened. So
brilliant.
I don't think there's any need to take any personal digs at Angela Rayner. For myself, I'm just focused on my campaign and how we're doing in Ashton Under Lyne.
Great. Thank you, Rob. So you shared something off screen, which is something else you do from a sports point of view. So I suppose my question is, how do you go from wrestling to being involved in politics? What are the parallels there, do you think, Rob? What is the inspiration for wrestling and changing and going in this new direction?
Well, I must say, Mark, there is zero connection between my professional wrestling career and politics, but there are a few similarities. Traveling up and down the country, I've been all over, winning things. In this case, seats. In that case, championships and matches. So there are a few similarities. Obviously, there's a fair bit of speaking on a microphone involved in professional wrestling, so I am used to that spotlight. But otherwise, there aren't many crossovers between wrestling and politics in itself. But yeah, it's something I love. I enjoy doing. I've done it for many years now, since I was about 19, something like that. And And yeah, it's a passion of mine, and I've been rather successful at it. So
Excellent. So what has drawn you to, I mean, you're 25 years of age, which is fantastic. So what has drawn you to be involved in politics and to then be involved in Reform UK?
well, as you know, Mark, you'll agree with me, but I think this country's going in the completely wrong direction. I mean, when I first started getting involved, it was and attending conferences and getting, making connections with reform people and learning the policies. That was around the time of the COVID pandemic. Obviously, I've been politically clued in since before then. I followed British politics, generally more conservative leaning. But yeah, during the COVID pandemic, we saw the endless lockdowns, furlough payments, just the complete uproot of our own lives. And I mean, I had to pull out. Me and my missus, we've worked together since we were about 18. She was working in Ashton Under Lyne at the time, and over the years, we've been trying to put enough money together to buy a house, as you do. We want to raise a family, and going into the COVID pandemic, we were set to buy one in Tintwistle, which is just about 15 minutes away from here in the other direction. We love the countryside, but we also like town life. So both Tintwistle, Glossop area, and Mosley, where I actually am now, fit the bill perfectly for us. We want to raise our children with access to fields, country walks, all of that good life, but also not be too far away from schools and the rest of the public services that towns provide. So we are right on the border of town life and Ashton Under Lyne and, the Peak District. So heading into the COVID pandemic, we were set to buy a house. We had everything arranged in Tintwistle, and then furlough payments and lockdowns hit, and we didn't know if we'd have a job to go back to. So we ended up moving out of Mottram, where we were living at the time, where we were renting a place. Very cheap rent, by the way. I do appreciate that. I think it was £380, something like that. Managed to haggle them down from about $410 when we started renting there. And in the process of buying a house and saving up, the lockdown hit and we had to pull out. So if you don't know if you have a job to get back to, then that was the only realistic decision that we could make at the time. So, and obviously professional wrestling was completely dead during that period. I wasn't able to wrestle. And that was when I knew I'd trained enough as well. I trained enough. I was a good enough wrestler to get myself out there a bit more. And again, that was completely stunted by COVID. Then we came along with the vaccine mandates and the pressure to take the vaccine. And I knew that this pandemic wasn't going to end until, well, from the government's perspective, everyone was vaccinated. So that was a difficult time. I personally made the choice not to have it. And I said, whatever the consequences may be, I'll have to live with that. But I'm not willing to take an mRNA injection, not a typical classic vaccine with zero long-term safety effects monitored on it. I wasn't willing to do that, and my missus wasn't either. So we instead went and lived with Ellie's dad in Staley Bridge. And believe it or not, weirdly, and it's not right, but we were able to save more money during the pandemic for buying a house than we were otherwise, If we'd have stayed renting and then the costs of owning a house, upkeep and all that side of things, we wouldn't have been able to afford the kind of house that we have now, which is a nice one. The cost of house prices obviously went up significantly after and following the COVID pandemic. And instead of paying about $150 for a house, £150,000, I think we're locked in at about just shy of £200,000 for practically the same house. So inflation is insane, especially when it comes to house prices. And obviously, I understand firsthand, the difficulty that young people, especially living on their own, especially with no family help, without inheritance, and with a regular paying job, they don't stand a chance these days. They don't stand a chance. And so that's another one of the great reasons that I'm standing for reform, because they actually do put young people first. They want to see us have, happy families, grow up, decent wages, competitive wages, low house prices, and that's what reform's policies direct us towards. So it really is a combination of economic factors and the COVID mania that occurred just a few years ago that seems to have been swept under the rug at this point.
I hear you, Rob. I hear you very loudly. So, as you are going about this constituency, engaging with the amazing people of Ashton and Under Lyne, what concerns do they have? What concerns are they bringing to you? What are the main discussion points that they're having?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to point out that all the focus is on Ashton Under Lyne, and I don't think that's right, because in the surrounding areas there's just as many people. Droylsden, Duckingfield, Audenshaw, these are big towns. But in terms of Ashton Under Lyne itself, I mean, it's a dying town. It's a dying town. It's been Labour council in there in the significant majority for the longest time of 50 years or something like that. Labour MP in Angela Rayner for the past, 10 years. And it's gone downhill. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that, Ashton Market and the shops and services that are available in Ashton have declined purely because of the Labour Council and the Labour MP. It would be lying for me to tell you that. It's a combination of internet shopping. People buy things online these days. I'm just as bad for it myself. Amazon, you can click and then you get it the next day, but it just decimates the incentive to travel into the market to pick up your goods. On top of that, I'm not going to make you a bunch of false promises in terms of living in. Given that I'm elected MP of Ashton Under Lyne, which is my full intention, and I think we are doing extremely well, an MP can only work with the council. So I'd have a level of influence over the council. I'd be able to work with the council on certain things, but I wouldn't be able to turn Ashton Under Lyne around like that. That's just not how the system works. But I do take seriously the concerns of all of the constituents of Ashton Under Lyne, Droylsden, Audenshaw, and Duckingfield. And I do know the concerns, which are there's a canopy going up over Ashton Under Lyne. What they're attempting to do is turn Ashton Market, which is a great historic market for the past, I think it's been there for 600 years now, and Stamford Street's been there even longer. They're attempting to make it into kind of an alfresco dining area, an outside eating, drinking kind of area, which obviously the concerns of the people on the markets is that they're going to lose a job. Now, obviously, I stand for them, and I don't want to see that happen. So I don't want to see an entire overhaul of Ashton Market into this. I think it's a good idea in principle, and it will attract people into the town, but there also does need to be a market. On top of that, there's the public baths. Ashton Under Lyne and Duckingfield used to have their own public baths, and over the years they have shut down. So you've got zero community access to that. You have to travel out to Hyde, travel a bit further. Swimming lessons. You can't take a local school to the pool if there is no pool. So that'd be something I take more seriously, is trying to get a new public baths within Ashton and Duckingfield. But as I prefaced, I only would have limited influence over making that happen. But like I said, I'm more than willing, and I want to work with the Labour Council, and there's a couple of Conservatives there to make these things happen and to see some life go back into Ashton. I mean, I grew up here. I know what it's like. I know what it used to be. You used to go to Ashton for a day out. You go to the market. You go to the theatre, which is closed down. I believe someone's working on renovating the theatre, though. You'd go to the baths for the day. You'd have a nice day. But these days, it's dying. Small businesses can't exist there anymore. They're closing down. All you get is charity shops. And it's the same tale across most of England, really. So what I want to do, to the best of my abilities, is help build up them small businesses again. You know, push back on the council where they, for example, trying to pedestrianise Stamford Street. You know, they're telling you, from what I've heard from the people on the street, one second they want to pedestrianise it, the next second they're saying they're delaying it. All it will do is reduce the traffic that goes through there, and so access, and visibility to the signs of the beautiful shops that we have there. All that it'll do is that. And people aren't going to walk down there of their own will. You know, you drive through there to get to other places. So I do think that in general is a bad idea and is rather unpopular with the people who work there and live there. There is all sorts that needs doing. But ultimately, broadly speaking, I would like to see Ashton rejuvenated. Right now, it is somewhat dangerous. You feel on edge going to Ashton due to crime, littering, drug abuse openly, and the police don't seem to do anything about it. So really, to fix Ashton, people need an incentive to go there. And when they're disincentivized by antisocial behavior, mobs and gangs on the streets, that's not a good thing. And if you want to start making Ashton right again, that's the first place you need to start. Is you need to clamp down on the violence and the gangs that roam and the litter. It's disgusting. We have some of the greatest architecture in Ashton Under Lyne. We have some of the most beautiful buildings. We have a town hall that I think is 1800s, thereabouts, 1850, something like that, style town hall, and it is in complete rot and decay. It's been allowed to get to this point. I believe it's going to cost, the estimates are about 9 million to renovate. But my question is, how did it get like that in the first place? It's got a museum inside of it. We'd visit that as kids. Do you know what it has inside? It has World War II medals and the medals of our ancestors that we should be venerating. And instead, now it's completely closed off and there's no access to that. That is so wrong, in my opinion. So these are just my perspectives on the local area. I will add, not to ramble on, Mark. I believe I am the only local candidate that's standing, bar the Greens, in Ashton Under Lyne. The Conservatives have literally, not to come off too over the top, but they parachuted someone in from Sussex. You literally couldn't get any further away from Ashton Under Lyne. I'm sure she's a lovely person, and she has some great ideas on farming. However, let's be honest, how are you supposed to stand for your constituents if you don't know them, if you're from a completely different background? You're from literally as far as you could get from Ashton Under Lyne, as you could. So I have made a bit of a joke. She's done a bit of a photo shoot on the top of IKEA. So I went up there the other day. We have this big blue IKEA. I made a bit of a joke saying, when the Conservatives parachuted you in, did you just aim for the biggest, bluest thing you could see in all of Ashton? It's just a joke, but the point stands. I am a local lad. I've grown up here, lived here all my life. I didn't go to university. I went straight into work from college, and I was even born there. I was born in Tameside General Hospital in Ashton Under Lyne. So I have seen it. And my parents and my grandparents obviously have seen the degradation of Ashton Under Lyne over the years. And it's not good. It's not good. And we need to turn it around.
Rob, thank you. And so you've raised a very important thing, which is you've talked about crime. You've talked about litter on the streets, trying to, working with the council. So are there enough police men and women on the streets? Is that a concern? What about infrastructure? And I do apologize on the one hand, because it seems we are regularly having this discussion up and down the country, as you pointed out. So are people finding it easy to get an appointment for their local general practitioner. I think what you raised about the swimming baths, I think, is brilliant because of your link with sports, and getting young people healthy saves money on the National Health Service. So what about infrastructure and those issues? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll give you an example. So my missus, she used to work in Claire's Accessories, which is inside the arcade centre, which is just next to Ashton Market. She did it in college, and then on the coming out of college, just to make some money, so we could start becoming a bit more self-sufficient. I had to get her out of there. I had to get her a job at where I work instead, because she was getting, the types coming in, stealing, giving grief. She's a girl, she can't defend herself. The security have zero power other than escorting people out. All across the country, we've got this crime problem of petty theft not being prosecuted because they say our prisons are full, which I have no doubt that they are. But it's not right. If we can't get these simple things right, how are we supposed to address any of the larger problems? And it all stems from that kind of thing. How are you supposed to attract people to Ashton if you can't even work there safely? And another personal anecdote, the last time I went on a bus, I must admit, I'm not a fan of public transport. As soon as I could, I got myself a car. But this is the reason why. Because I lived in Ashton. Sorry, I didn't live in Ashton. I was driving home from college in Ashton on one of the buses. Literally, the last time I ever rode a bus, someone was threatening to stab me. If that doesn't tell the tale, and that was coming out of Ashton, I don't know what does. So I don't see many police officers around Ashton Under Lyne. I know they will have a minor presence, but even if they are there, do they even have the powers or the motivation to actually tackle this stuff? I don't think so. So I do think we need more policing, and I think we need zero tolerance from our police.
And you raise a brilliant point about dealing with a Conservative candidate. We're not being rude, but we're just saying that if you're going to parachute someone in from Sussex, an area I know very well, there is a large difference. And also being a local person, which you've more than underlined that, excuse the pun, is the fact that, where you have been born, where you've been brought up, there's your parents, grandparents, and all the rest. And that's why you feel passionate about the area. So, Rob, could you describe, you've got urban, what's the farming? Is there farming going on? You've talked about the countryside. What is happening with the farmers and the farming land where you are?
Yeah, of course. Now, actually, in Ashton Under Lyne, we don't have many farms. We are more of an urban area or semi-urban on the outskirts of Manchester. So there isn't an enormous number, or aren't an enormous number of farms in Ashton Under Lyne. There are some towards the north side, and I haven't had chance yet to speak with the farmers that live there and obviously work the land there. But I have had chance because I actually grew up in Hyde, which is the next town along from Ashton Under Lyne. There's a road from Hyde called Matley Lane, and I spoke to Steve, the farmer there. And what a guy. I initially went there. So I was coming home from my grandma's. I'd had a shandy and all that kind of thing. And you couldn't make it up. I'm not making it up. But I have a family member, my uncle. He suffered a stroke a few months ago. So I told my cousin I'd take her to the hospital, and because we were thinking it would be the last, it was kind of alarm bells that it'd be the last moment we could spend with him. But I knew that Emily, my cousin, was coming back from from Manchester Airport. So I had 15 minutes or so to kill as I was on my way to pick her up and go to the hospital. I stopped by Matley Lane because I've seen in the past Steve has had Reform banners and Brexit banners outside the front of his house. And I thought, I'll just have a word with him and see what he thinks about things. I've got a few signs, if he'd be willing to put them up, and just hear him out on the issues whilst I had 15 minutes to spend. I was wearing a crisp white shirt, essentially slim jeans. I don't wear skinny jeans, and I was wearing very expensive trainers that I spent way too much money on at the time. So not farming attire at all. And Steve, the great guy that he is, he took me all around the farm and he told me all of the issues that were affecting. And I said, Steve, I have to go. I'm not making it up. I really do have to go. But later on, thank God, my uncle's okay. He's obviously still in a bad position, but I got on word from my cousin that he's okay. He's still with us, and she'd already got a lift up there. So I went back to Steve later that day to speak about farming with him. I gave him a call and said, I'm free. Do you want to have a word? I arrived there at 8 o'clock. We stood out there talking. The time just flew by until 3:30 in the morning. This was about a week ago. My sleep cycle was ruined. I have been making up for it ever since. This morning, I must admit, I had a bit of a lie-in, but it's needed. It's busy work. I'm applying all my efforts to this campaign, and my sleep is such a mess at the moment. I can't stop thinking. I'm going to bed thinking about things. But back to the question of farming. The major issues are, obviously, we're in a Labour-run area with Labour councillors. And Steve couldn't have emphasised this hard enough. He said, there are good Labour councillors. There are good Conservative councillors. There are some that will take our side and some that do everything they can to help us. So don't try and paint them all with the same brush. But the case is, nationally, farming is down enormously across the board. Farming and food is the backbone of any country, always has been, always will be. And instead we've seen, I think under the Labour government, 80,000 farmers go out of work. And under the Conservative government, I think it's somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 have gone out of work. So we are crippling our farming industry. And as I said, it's at the root of everything. Now, I only spoke with Steve, like I said, because I wanted to hear what he had to say. I don't have an enormous number of farmers in my constituency, but the major issues that he's telling me is obviously under Tony Blair, they opened up the countryside. There's open access everywhere. This isn't affecting this is more of an environmental issue. It means that natural wildlife, the beautiful birds that we have, they can't settle when there's dogs running free, when there's people walking up paths, disturbing the land. And he pointed out the difference between his farm, which is a natural cow farm. They do, obviously they sell milk to the supermarkets and the likes, and they do beef products and cow products in general. He was telling me how, and I was completely out of the loop on farming issues, but he was telling me, obviously, natural farming, organic cow farms, they work in synergy with nature. It attracts birds. The land is fresh. It gives the land chance to recycle. When you move the cows around, it means the soil has a higher nutrient density, and the cows are healthy, and you can milk them, and it's good quality milk. He was telling me wildlife is disturbed compared to, he was showing us another farm where they've allowed open access, where there's none of these birds. You don't hear the bird songs. You don't hear, there's no presence there of these birds. So that's the first major issue with farming, is farmers need their own land. They can't be having people walk through them. Paths, okay. He suggested dogs off the leash shouldn't be allowed within certain months, of the year when things are starting to grow and become fresh. So that was his suggestion. And on top of that, the major things are we have all of these EU regulations left over from a botched Brexit, which just completely cripple farmers' ability to make a living, price fixing by the supermarkets. So they have to sell at certain prices and it's backed by the government. And of course, the big one, net zero, which is just completely crippling our farmers. So this all needs to be pushed back against, in my opinion. We don't want less farmers, obviously. We need more farmers. If we're going to be a self-sustaining economy, if we're going to look after our own, if anything globally ever occurs, which we're dragged into, or war breaks out and the supply chains are broken, we need to be able to look after ourselves. We need to be able to produce the food. We see a lot of this pushback from the green types, the green activists and all of that, many of which are vegans who would say, alternative lifestyles are okay. I have no problem with that. Just don't force it on our farmers. Don't force it on us, please. Let's regrow our farming community. Let's have more farmers, not less. Under the Conservatives and Labour, the numbers have gone down. We need more of them. And on top of that, there's not enough agricultural colleges. It's a perfectly good profession. People are having to travel 2 hours to get to college, and these are young farmers. They have to travel a long way. How are you supposed to travel 2 hours to get to college, to come back, have your tea, you go to bed? No time for yourself, no time for studying. So we need to increase funding for agricultural colleges. And these are all parts of Reform's manifesto, by the way. Scrapping net zero, putting more emphasis on our farmers, helping Britain grow its way out of this, this economic, I want to use some language there, but I'm not going to. And yeah, where is the emphasis on food? There is none. There is none. So that's my position on farming. And like I said, Lizzie, the Conservative candidate, seems to be very good on these things, but it's the same old situation. I mean, Conservative or Labour, they're both deeply ingrained in the establishment. They have their own bureaucracies that run throughout enormous established parties like Conservative and Labour. Can they actually get anything real done, though? Or are they too tied into the system? I would make that second case. Someone like myself, I'm completely self-funded as of this point. I've not taken any donations. I'm backed by Reform, obviously, but I have no political ties. I don't owe any favors. I have no financial involvement. So I am actually able and willing to be able to put policies like this forward and get them passed. Whereas you never know with who's funding the Conservatives, who's got a stake in supermarkets, who wants to maintain the status quo as it is. You understand where I'm coming from. I'm a fresh face and I'm willing to put my people first. End of. The British people, all British people first.
Rob, you raise a very important point, and that's why I've asked you about farming, which is a vital community and needs all of our support, because food security is absolutely paramount. And in your case, in your area, the farmer then wants an area in which he can sell his goods locally. Wouldn't that be fantastic? So they're sourced locally, grown and fed locally, etc., and then sold locally. So that helps the community.
There's so much in the way of farmers selling their produce that they make to the local people around them. I personally, as you could imagine, being a professional wrestler, I'm a bit of a health freak. I want raw milk. I don't want homogenized pasteurized milk. I want the pure nutrients that comes with raw milk. And it is so hard to get a hold of. If guys like Steve were able to just sell that on the local market without all of these regulations in the way, without all of these rules in the way, they'd be able to take in more of the profit off it. and they'd be able to grow as an industry. But right now, farming is massively neglected and not many people are talking about it.
Well, I'm glad that you are, and I have been having this conversation with other candidates as well, and that's why I ask, and I'll then ask the next question. Even though it's on the sort of outskirts of your constituency and then beyond, just out of interest, are farmers being pressurized where you are to then double glaze their fields, as the wonderful Rob Baraclif in Derbyshire then talks about, which is to turn around and say, we'll put solar panels all over the fields. Is that an issue? What about green issues like that?
It is. And I know Robert, he's a good guy. I met him the other day. What a great
I do apologise. Robert is in Bolsover.
That's right.
In Bolsover. So thank you. Sorry.
And I have wrestled there, believe it or not. I had one of my best matches in Bolsover. So I do have a personal connection to Bolsover as well. It's a great place. You know, they got that they got the castle on top and all that kind of thing. So it's what a place. But I apologize. I have forgotten the question regarding double glazing. That's correct. That's correct.
Where we're talking about solar panels all over farming fields.
Yeah. So from what I've heard from Steve, there is a level of pressure there. It would require to change what he's farming from cows to sheep, because the sheep can still graze between solar panels, but you still have the issue of the fact that we live in England. Everyone knows what English weather is like. It's still 50-50 whether we'll get a decent summer or not this year, you know. So converting farmers' fields from producing food, something real, tangible, you can eat it, it nourishes you, to solar panels, which the technology, let's be honest, still isn't there. It still isn't there. It requires you to strip the fields, cable them. Sun needs to be in the right direction. Sun needs to be out. Where are our priorities? Do you know what I mean? We have natural gas reserves. We have oil reserves in England that we are not taking advantage of. Why are we exporting our energy from Europe, from Saudi Arabia, from Russia? Why are we allowing ourselves to become dependent on these countries? Paying excessively for our fuel, for energy, which is another backbone of our economy and how we live our life. Why are we doing that? And why aren't we just taking it from our own land? Do it safely. As I say, I do have a touch of experience with this as a laboratory analyst, dealing with soil contaminants and dealing with water contamination and the importance of the land being preserved and not allowing hydrocarbon excesses and contamination into the land. I do understand all of that. But as you'll know, Mark, the reform policy is safe extraction of our natural shale gas, give it 2 years of testing, and then fast track for the extraction. So I don't see an issue with that. And the other big thing on green issues, nuclear. Why won't anyone address nuclear? Granted, you need to import uranium. That is one downside. But when in coordination with oil and natural gas, why aren't we exploiting small nuclear plants across the country to provide safe, cheap, clean, and effective energy to our people? Why are we spending so much elsewhere? There's no good answer for that. The green types, you'll hear them, they'll say we need to be carbon dioxide neutral, net zero, all that side of things. But at what expense? At what expense is the question. And I'm not willing to do that. Reform aren't willing to do that. We need to put our country, our energy, and our food first, obviously.
What is absolutely fascinating when the green types do that, it's like they go on CO2. Well, as far as I'm concerned, with my own understanding of science, trees take in CO2 and produce oxygen, which you need so you can go and win another wrestling championship. And I need to be able to climb the stairs. It's called being able to breathe. So this is the thing. We seem to have lost this basic understanding of science. Rob, as we sort of come into the last sort of section of our time, and I'm very grateful, and I think you've just laid out things wonderfully, but narratively by talking over the last period of time. So thank you for that. But again, if we recap, or I'll just ask you another question. What about opportunities for young people? What are the jobs in the area? What is the industry anywhere, the area? You've just talked about farming being on the edge and the importance of that, and a wonderful comment on needing agricultural colleges. You're absolutely right. We're teaching that. What about colleges where we could teach trades, carpentry, electrics, roofers, all of this, apprenticeships? What are the opportunities for young people in the area? And if they're not there, what would you like to see?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because I actually can speak with the most experience as to the issues with young people and getting a job and that side of things. I'm a big believer in trade colleges. So much so, and you're going to think I'm making it up, I'm on a joinery course myself at the moment. I was looking for a career change and decided to go and do night school at Oldham College and learn the trade of joinery. My granddad was a roofer. I am more impressed by what my granddad can do with a piece of wood and a chisel and a saw than near enough anything else in this world. It's immense. And I thought, I really have zero. I can't do any of this. I wasn't taught any of this. So I've been making up for it the past year, and I've been going to joinery night school, thinking maybe that would be something I'd like to go into. That was the plan. I do want to get into joinery. Politics has whisked me away in the meantime, but that may still be on the cards after the fact. And there's nothing wrong with a trade or a skill. You can earn very good money. You can earn great money from doing a good trade and learning earlier. If you can get in there earlier and go instead to what used to be the polytechnics or the skill colleges, the trade colleges, I think that's a great thing. You can earn money from an early age, good money, and start raising a family even earlier. If that's on the cards for you, if that's what you want to do. So absolutely, I am all for incentivizing our young people to go into these sectors instead. So many cases, as you'll know, we go from primary school, whisked into high school, all very similar subjects and similar curriculums, all one size fits all. No, molding the curriculum to the strengths and the weaknesses of the students there. We're forced through this school system, primary, high school, you then go to college, you then go to university. And as you'll know, the only reason there's so many university courses available nowadays is because the previous Labour government wanted to defer the young people getting into employment after the fact. And they thought they wanted, and there's a positive there, they wanted to upskill our young people. But as you'll know, many of the university courses these days, you come out of the other end, even good university courses these days, you come out of the other end and there is nothing there for you. There's no job. There's nothing there for you. Unless you come in from Oxford and Cambridge, and even then, you might struggle. Unless you've made certain connections and utilized that aspect of university, or you have a family friend, or you know someone in your network that can get you a job, you are completely on your own, and that has to change. So what I suggest instead is more emphasis on trades, skills, agricultural education from an earlier age, I suggest we don't treat everyone, and this will sound like I'm not being equal or something like that, but people do have strengths and weaknesses. I was very blessed in the fact that I am good at speaking. I'm a quick learner. I can apply what I've learned very quickly to what I'm doing. Some people just don't have it. They just don't want. It's not that they don't want to. They just can't sit there in a classroom for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, taking in information that's ultimately irrelevant to them and to what profession they'll want to go into. Why are we doing that, especially to young boys? Not enough people talks about this. Why do we do that? Instead, we have what they call naughty kids or special needs or something like that. There are real cases and there are people with disabilities. But if your child is hyperactive, if your child has a lot of energy, that's a good thing. That's a positive, not a negative. These sort of students would be better off doing more PE, doing more physical education, playing sports, playing games. People learn through playing games. People learn they learn social dynamics. They understand. It's called street smarts. You pick up street smarts and you pick up physical attributes, physical capabilities that you can apply elsewhere in your life. So that is incredibly important to me. Coming out of college, instead of going into university, let's pipeline our students into building this country back, building it back, infrastructure, energy, agriculture.
Rob, thank you. And as an ex-teacher, and it's not about me, it's about you, I can, back that up, because within our education system, if you look at the national curriculum, it's too prescriptive. You fill this box in, you fill that box in, you're channeling people in a particular way. But the other thing is, and it's marvelous what you were saying about, your granddad and looking at this, we're talking about mentoring, aren't we? We're wanting to encourage young people to look at what the other skills that are around from people that are older than them. And that's why social cohesion through families, through your community is so important, because people are able to keep an eye on young people in that way and encourage them. So sort of wrapping up, we have talked about your vision to bring your town alive. You've talked about the concerns of the lack of the police force. We don't want a police service. We'd actually like a police force for a change on the streets in your area. And also you've tied it wonderfully, because having swimming baths, giving leisure opportunities to young people and others is extremely important, plus covering your concerns about farming and my own, because food security is really, really important. And one of the wonderful things about doing this is you're just finding out the concerns about what's going on across the country, and there are a number of issues that regularly seem to come up. Rob, how can people reach out to you? How can they find you? How can they get involved with helping you?
So I'm at Rob for Reform across all social media except Facebook. Facebook, you'll find me at Robert Barraclif, Reform PPC, something along them lines. So you can contact me on Instagram, TikTok. We're good on the TikTok. Twitter's popping off, so get on the Twitter. We're doing very well across all social media. And of course, if you want to contact me personally via email, rob4reform@protonmail.com.
Brilliant. And Rob, just finally, are there any hustings that are coming up that you will be contributing to? What about, is there opportunities for radio interviews? Is there publicity going out in local newspapers? What's happening on that front for you?
I have not heard any word about hustings, and I have not had the time. I was only selected as a candidate about a week and a half ago. So I have been whisked through the process. Only found out I was standing, only just got the time off work. So I haven't had a chance to read the newspapers. I believe if there's a hustings around, I'm supposed to be contacted by them. I believe that's the case. So if anything does arise, I will be on that. But in terms of the rest of the stuff, I can't remember what you said after Hustings.
Well, what I'm saying is, does it mean that you could take your own stall out into the middle of the market square, so to speak, for people to come and engage with you? Have you got plans to do that kind of thing in Ashton?
Indeed, I am working with Barbara, the candidate from Hyde and Staley Bridge, to get that sorted. We're going to get a stall and we're going to start setting it up, and we're gonna take the market by storm. We're going to go to Audenshaw, Droylsden, Duckinfield. We're not going to neglect the other towns. I'm not going to say anymore, but we're not going to neglect the other towns. So we'll be out there. We will be out there. I've got leaflets on order. I've got so many volunteers that are willing to help out with leafleting. Everyone is going to receive a leaflet through the post, but I would like a more personal one to be posted through everyone's door. So I am working on these things to the best of my abilities. And today, what I actually got up to, I went down to, where was it? Dronefield, just over the Peak District. A nice drive over to Dronefield. Picked up some signs off another great candidate, Paul Parkin. So I am working in cohesion with the other candidates. We're trying to get this sorted. This snap election has caught most of us off guard, and we're going to give it our best crack. And I can see us doing very, very well in Ashton Under Lyne. I intend on winning it. I think we can. I think it is completely winnable for reform. So I'm going to do all I can to push us over the line. We all know the other candidates. We've got Angela Rayner, and we've got a nice lady called Aroma standing for the Workers' Party. I understand a lot of the concerns of the Workers' Party. I'm not going to pretend like I agree with the prescriptions, and I'm not going to pretend like I agree with everything they say, but they do make good points. They do seem to care about local people, and that is fantastic. But I don't think it's the answer. I think I'm the answer. I think reform is the answer. We want low taxes. We want reduce immigration, and we want to see our towns become towns again.
Well, Rob, thank you for that, and thank you for actually saying where you're respectfully addressing, the other candidates from different parties and different points of view. And it's a bit like what you said at the beginning about Angela Rayner, and good for you, because it's important to have discourse, but it's important how we have that discourse. And that's the problem, isn't it? We've now reached the point where ideologically people think it's perfectly okay to throw things at other people and all the rest. It's not. And it's how we address people with respect to say, you're entitled to your opinion. I disagree, and this is what we need to do. And it'd be nice if people could actually work together for the better of the country. Rob, I just want to thank you for your time. We're in the last minute. If there's anything else that you need to say, please do it. But I just want to thank you so much for your time and the enjoyment of having this conversation. And without sounding sort of too old and parenty, I want to thank you for the inspiration that you are as a young person, because it gives people like me a lot of hope. And I genuinely mean that. And I'm very grateful to you for that.
No, I'm grateful for your time too, Mark. And maybe it's just my youthful naivete. Who's to say? But I do think we can get on. And I think we should be working together to make our towns better. Throwing personal barbs out, making personal attacks. That's for someone else. It's not for me. It's not what I stand for. So I am willing to work with people. I'm willing to put my hand across the line, say, let's work. Let's actually work together and make things better. There will be points of disagreement, but just through dialogue, we can overcome those. If there's nothing we can do, we'll have to agree to disagree on some issues. I am very strong on a lot of things. Zero tolerance on policing. Strong police officers. We have to cut immigration. It's a contentious one, but it has to happen. We are letting millions of new people into the country, and it is just straining the rest of us that already live here. So we have to reduce that. We have to freeze all non-essential immigration. and we need to start putting our people first.
I hear you, and I've got to play us out. But thank you so much, Rob. All right. And let's try and do this again. And I wish you all the best with your campaign, sir. So
Cheers,
I'm going to play us out. Stay there until the other side, and then I'll officially say goodbye. But thank you very much, Rob. Cheers.
No worries.